Hi everybody, I'm Bobby Healy. I'm the CEO and founder of Mana Drone Delivery. Right now I'm speaking to you from Ireland, Dublin, Ireland, and it's a real pleasure to be here. I have an affinity with Singapore. I've done business there for over 20 years, and so I'm delighted to be there virtually. So Mana Drone Delivery is pretty clear what it does. We use, I'll just get out of the way, that aircraft behind me. We design and build here between the UK and Ireland, and we use it to carry cargo, lightweight, low value cargo like prepared food, coffee, donuts, you name it, even birthday cakes, and we deliver directly from consumers' houses, directly from restaurants or convenience stores directly to consumers' houses. I have a video which I'm going to show you shortly, but I wanted to first tell you about the process. There's no slides, by the way, so you're going to have to listen very carefully. I've had a lot of detail, a lot of technical detail, which I'm going to talk about as well. So we essentially, we've been 3 years in business. We're live today. We're running commercially in Ireland today. There's a lot of talk about drone delivery around demos and proof of concepts. We're live. We're generating revenue, and we are doing about 100 flights a day, delivery flights a day, in a town of about 10,000 people, about 3,000 houses in that town. So we work with aviation regulators. Drones are aircraft, and the airspace is very important, obviously in terms of safety and traffic management. So we work with the European regulations, and specifically the Irish Aviation Authority, to get permission to do what we're doing. In the AI context, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what we have on board as well. I can't reveal too much because we do have competitors, but I will give you some very interesting information on what we do. So essentially, you're going to see a video now. It's about a 2-minute video of a delivery experience. I hope you can see it and hear it really well. I have pretty good bandwidth, so I think that should work. I'll try to keep quiet during the video, so I'll explain to you first what you're going to see, so you're aware. So the video starts. You'll see the aircraft in the distance coming towards a house. You'll see a little child talking about it, and that's important to hear the child, because you'll notice that the child's voice is louder than the aircraft itself, and it's very important. So for drone delivery and using drones at scale, the biggest concerns, the biggest doubts about the industry are going to be around privacy, around noise, around security, safety. Safety is actually the last thing that people are concerned about. Privacy and noise are the big things. So you'll hear the child speaking, and you'll hear that the drone is actually not as loud as the child. Anyone with children understands that very well. So the aircraft will arrive. It travels at about 80 kilometers per hour, so about just over 50 miles per hour. And it carries a cargo inside the aircraft. So underneath that aircraft there's doors, cargo bay doors that will open automatically when the aircraft arrives, and that releases the cargo. We hover when we arrive, which you'll see, at about 15 meters, and lower the product down onto the ground with a winch. And so you'll see that takes about 6 seconds, and then we leave. And when the aircraft arrives, it arrives at about 80 meters and comes down to the 15-meter delivery height. That's where we use most of computer vision to find out what's happening. So first of all, we get the customer's address where we're going to do the delivery. We know roughly the GPS coordinates of the center of their house from that GPS address, because we've used offline, we've identified the entire area, we've looked at all the houses, we can match addresses to rooftops, and we know roughly the coordinates where we're going to deliver. When we arrive to the house, we have a higher resolution view of the house, and we're able to identify a flat area, either grass or concrete, that's close to the front or the back of the house to safely deliver the cargo. And you'll see when the cargo is delivered, it's quite a gentle process. So we can deliver coffee without spilling a drop. In fact, our number one product to deliver is coffee and croissants in the morning time. We fly at night, we fly in rain, we fly in heavy winds, and really AI in our context, I'll go into it in more detail after the video, but AI is going to play a more and more important role in what we're doing. So I'm going to go ahead and hopefully successfully share my screen, and I'll keep quiet now for the next couple of minutes once that's playing.
There it is.
Okay, so I hope you were able to. I'm just going to stop that. I hope you were able to see that properly. My screen is acting up a bit funny. Yeah, so I hope you were able to see that okay, and certainly hear it. You saw when it arrived, the doors open. So what happened there was when the aircraft arrived, it has onboard imagery of the house where it's going to. So it knows and compares what it sees on the ground to what's on board. So that's very important because we have extra verification to make sure that we've arrived at the right place and that everything is as expected. So for example, if someone built a new swimming pool that we're not aware of, or if there's large obstacles like a truck or things like that that we're not expecting, we just return to home. We don't do the delivery. And so what's on board? Interesting thing about aviation is that nobody cares about functionality. They only care about safety. And at scale, this industry will be flying. If you look at, normal aircraft movements, a typical airline will generate at best case several hundred flights a day, or maybe for the largest airlines in the world, a couple of thousand flights a day. At scale, the drone delivery industry will be doing 10 to 100 million flights a day, at least. So the numbers are much larger. You can add 2 or 3 zeros to the end in terms of number of flights. So therefore, we have to think about the industry in purely today in safety terms and not in functionality terms. So our aircraft behind me can carry about 2 kilos, so just over 2 kilos, so about 5 or 6 pounds, and 15,000 cubic centimeters, which is about the size of a large shoebox. And functionally, that's more than enough. In terms of range, we can fly about 10 miles or 16 kilometers from the base in strong winds and rain. So that's kind of the envelope. When you think about safety, the normal way to think about safety is engineering reliability, airframe, propulsion, energy, as in batteries, and just make sure that mechanically everything works. But actually, where we think about safety is obviously, you have to assume that the aircraft is safe physically. You can use AI in many ways to make sure things are safe. So on board that aircraft, we have multiple cameras that can be used to detect a number of things. So they can be used to detect that the ground is clear, that there is a person or not a person there. We can use it to detect while we're flying what the rate of rain is. We can use it in the dark using LiDAR, sonar, or radar to detect obstacles in the sky. And when you get to a huge scale, ultimately there's going to be someone, anyone who lives in Singapore knows this, you know, because if you ever stayed in the Marina Bay Sands and you are on the roof of that hotel, you're going to see drones all day long breaking the law, flying around the Marina Bay Sands, taking video. And so there's always going to be illegal drones in the air. There's going to be large birds of prey in the air. And while these are very low risk today because, you know, the businesses are not at scale yet, or the industry's not, ultimately, when you're flying tens and hundreds of millions of flights, there will be a collision unless you have technology to avoid it. So the way we look at AI and GPU, or for us more, it's computer vision or blending of vision sensors like radar and CMOS. And we look at that as what is the confluence of power on board with weight profile and energy profile. So in other words, how much processing power can we get on board the aircraft and still afford the weight and the energy that processing power uses? So we have a slightly different view on AI, and we measure not just because vision, particularly in vision algorithms, are pretty off the shelf now and pretty straightforward to work with. But what's not easy to work with is if we want to stream, you know, highly critical data, particularly at nighttime where you have to use multiple sources of data. During the day, it's easier because you can just use a camera. At night, you have to use more sensors. So you're blending, you know, perhaps 2, if not 4 different streams of data and processing that. And so you're going to use, in fact, on our aircraft now, we're using NVIDIA, and depending on the circumstances, we'll use a large NVIDIA board or a small one. And what's common across all of these devices, all of the GPUs, is that they use a lot of energy. And energy is the last thing we want to give away, because the more energy we use, the bigger the battery, the heavier the aircraft, and that's a recursive problem. So we look at, you know, ways to optimize the actual heat dissipated by the GPU, the weight of the GPU and the energy. And where we're at the kind of edge of that equation is we've found a way basically to do everything we need to reduce the quality of the stream coming in on the fly with a primary GPU, and then do the actual model processing on a secondary GPU to allow us to reduce the quality but keep what we're doing before it goes to the model. And that allows us to have far less GPU than we need, which in turn can be a lighter GPU. In fact, our GPU doesn't even need a heat sink, because our maximum flight time is about 6 minutes. And so by the time everything gets very hot, we're already home. So that's a crazy world that we're in. We're worried about 6 minutes of processing and how much energy that uses and how much heat that generates. So it's a very interesting space, as you can imagine. And then on privacy is another one where when you say the word drone, you know, in public, and you say that you're going to fly those drones over populated areas, over people's houses, over people's gardens, over the roads, you know, privacy is probably one of the biggest things people talk about. And then when you say we're also using AI, then they really go crazy, because there's one thing about, you know, cameras in the streets that police forces have or whatever. You can avoid them and you don't have to participate, or you can complain about them. But if you fly a drone over somebody's head and you don't have their permission, you have the regulator's permission, but not their permission, you really need to think very, very carefully about how you use those sensors and what AI that you use. So it's our belief, and certainly it's how we act, that it's not valid and it shouldn't be legal to record anything on a drone unless you're the police force. So therefore, we don't record anything. The only thing that we do is we use the AI and we use the vision to actually safely navigate to where we're going. and we actually do not record anything. And I think when people are building AI, particularly in the space, I think that we should be subjected to a higher degree of scrutiny and privacy requirements than most other industries. So that's really what I wanted to say today. I'm very happy to, and I love to take questions about the business. I think I've covered most of what I'd like to cover. I hope you enjoyed the video, and very happy to answer your questions. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much. That was very, very interesting. So what we'll do is we're going to give the opportunity